Greetings everybody, my name is Alex and welcome to my top 20 games as of the year 2020. There's gonna be a short, spoiler-free description for each game. And as a quick note, there won't be more than one game from each series. So for example, there can't be 2 Final Fantasy games. Now before we start with number 20, here's a quick honorable mention. Journey, released in 2012 for the PlayStation 3. An artful and peaceful experience that wants you to take your time. It has seamless online functionality, and the only way to communicate is through body language. A breath of fresh air when you don't want a bunch of voice acting, exposition, and a cluttered heads-up display forced down your throat. Super Mario 64, released in 1996 for the Nintendo 64. A whimsical platformer with an emphasis on control and movement. This game has a big speedrunning community and a super high skill ceiling. For a long time, they have optimized and researched the game down to its very core, which has made me appreciate how all video games work. Ragnarök Online, released in 2002 for the PC. My first MMORPG, and one of the more nostalgia-fueled games on this list. Its unique style in both visual and gameplay design has always spoken to me. This game has a classic type of feel to it and doesn't hold your hand all the time. It rewards exploration and experimentation of your own accord. The elements play a big role in how damage is calculated, so you can't really use fire against a fire-type enemy. This sounds obvious, but you'll be surprised how many games of this genre don't care about this. My favorite part is that every enemy feels different and has its own place in the world, and each have their own card. This makes farming or grinding more fun if you want to collect as many as you can. Kingdom Hearts, released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2. I grew up with Disney and Final Fantasy, so imagine my surprise when Kingdom Hearts came out. Seeing characters like Donald and Goofy beat the shit out of Cloud Strife was something I never expected. Naturally, this isn't the only reason why I love this game. Combining the whimsical nature of Disney with the RPG elements from Final Fantasy in real-time action battles is still fascinating to this day. Yoshi's Woolly World, released in 2015 for the Wii U. This game has everything I love about Nintendo in one complete experience. Memorable music, fluent gameplay, and fantastic visual design. And to top it all off, it stars my favorite Nintendo character, Yoshi. The co-op feature is really fun, and it's easy to pick up and play, even for newcomers of video games. As of this video, I hold the world record speedrun of classic any percent no badges one controller. Though this isn't much to brag about, since the game isn't popular at all. In fact, I feel like this is one of the most underrated Nintendo games ever. And I think it mostly has to do with it being exclusive to the Wii U, which was, unfortunately, a failure. Persona 5, released in 2016 for the PlayStation 4. As of writing this list, I just beat Persona 5 for the first time, so there might be some bias here as to why it's on this list already. But this game truly captured me with its bold dynamic style and a beautiful mix of JRPG, Pokemon, anime, and slice of life. I'm often facetious with games that touch on real life a lot, things like politics, greed, and responsibilities. But this game represents it really well and offers unique ways to deal with it. I really hope they continue with this series. In the meantime, I'll have to check out the previous games. F-Zero GX, released in 2003 for the GameCube. The F-Zero series has always been my favorite when it comes to racing. It's wicked fast, challenging, adrenaline pumping, and only gets better the more skilled you get at the game. One cool aspect is the many ways you can control your vehicle to go faster. You have the classic boost power after the first lap, so you can sacrifice health for speed. In F-Zero X, you can also slide and perform side attacks in the air. In F-Zero GX, you can snake, momentum turbo slide, and shift boost. Although most of these tricks were never intended by the developers, they made the games more versatile. As a F-Zero fan, I can only hope and dream that Nintendo will bring the series back. F-Zero is also the series that sparked my love for metal music. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, released in 2018 for the Nintendo Switch. The current king of all fighting games. What made these games special to me was to see all my favorite Nintendo characters in the same game for the first time. Who would win in a fight between Samus and Link was something I fantasized about as a kid. The competitive scene is amazing and full of hype. My favorite character in Smash has always been Captain Falcon. Overwatch, released in 2016 for the PC. My introduction to the FPS genre started back in the days of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, which was played with a controller and aim assist. So I wasn't good when it came to playing on a PC with a mouse and keyboard. As someone who played a lot of Team Fortress 2 back when it was new on the Xbox 360 and liked Blizzard games, I eagerly picked up Overwatch when it was still in beta. I went from a silver-ranked Mercy one-trick who couldn't aim to a master in all three roles. But what I love about Overwatch is mainly its vibrant characters, world building, and the different ways you can play it. Even people who can't aim can still do well in this game with characters that don't require it, or through general game sense or team strategy. Most games I've played and are on this list are ones that have a beginning and an end. Also games that came out before patches and updates were a thing. So once you got a game, that was it. The experience stayed the same through the years, including all bugs and glitches. So playing Overwatch is interesting for me, as it constantly changes through updates and patches. The esport is fantastic as well. Castlevania 64, released in 1999 for the Nintendo 64. This game has unfortunately always been under the staple of a horrible game in all aspects: visuals, controls, characters, and worst of all, as a Castlevania game. It was the first 3D Castlevania game, and the majority said it was an utter failure. Unlike Super Mario 64, which is still praised as a perfect transition from 2D to 3D. In my honest opinion, I think Castlevania 64 is underrated and misunderstood. Even though a lot of my love for this game is fueled by nostalgia, I think it has a special kind of gameplay and challenge to it. The music has always resonated with me, and my favorite part of the game are the boss battles, especially the final one. It's like navigating through the most chaotic orchestra ensemble. Devil May Cry 3, released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2. Like F-Zero, Devil May Cry 3 is velocious, difficult, exciting, and only gets better the more skilled you are at the game. Other than tearing through demons with a vast arsenal of weapons, the game has a focus on playing stylishly. So by cycling through different combos and weapons mid-fight, you get a better rank, which in turn gives you more currency to empower your characters to be even more stylish and deadly. I love the contrast between the overly confident characters, the hard-rocking music, and the themes of family, loss, and defeat. Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock, released in 2010 for the Xbox 360. What more can I say except that I love music and games? Guitar Hero also started my YouTube channels. I made a lot of charts for songs that weren't originally in the games, especially video game music and anime songs. Similar to playing a real instrument, the possibilities are near endless with how many songs you can play and how skillful you can become. I also love playing the drums.
Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting.
Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, released in 2002 for the GameCube. This game made me love psychological horror and blended it perfectly with smooth 60 FPS gameplay. The voice acting is on point, the story and the vast cast of characters that you switch between are all interesting. The gameplay mechanics, sanity effects, and the magic system are still unique to this day. The soundtrack is one of the best you can find on the GameCube. Speaking of which, I think that's the main reason why this game didn't get as much attention as it could have had. Most mature games were on the PS2, so this game went under the radar for people seeking a more serious and horrific experience. Secret of Evermore, released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo. Another game fueled by nostalgia. It lives in the shadow of Secret of Mana, but what I love about this game is the tone, the setting of the world, and how genuine it all feels. The game was made by a pretty small team, and most of them had never worked on a game before. It was also the first game Jeremy Soule composed music for, who would later move on to Elder Scrolls and Warcraft. This game was my first RPG and left a strong impression with its number nature in levels, experience points, equipment, and so on. Final Fantasy VIII, released in 1999 for the PlayStation. Some call it the black sheep of the series. This one changed some of the core Final Fantasy mechanics, such as replacing MP for the draw and stock system, introducing enemy level scaling, and a fixed XP requirement for every level. This left many players confused, and with a bad first impression, but with a little time and patience, you'll gradually understand how it all works and ultimately realize how versatile the system is. You can build your characters in many different ways, so experimentation is rewarding. This adds to the replay value, as there are multiple ways to challenge yourself once you're familiar with the system. The soundtrack is one of my all-time favorites, and the lack of voice acting makes the music shine even more. The world setting and atmosphere is literally beyond this world, and even though I have a lot of nostalgia, I still believe it's a really misunderstood game. The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, released in 2000 for the Nintendo 64. There is nothing I can say that still hasn't been said a million times about this game. It's a masterpiece. The story, characters, music, gameplay, and atmosphere are all top-notch. Ocarina of Time is just a hair away, but Majora's Mask won because of its daring nature. It has some very risky design that works out just wonderful, and I've never seen a game like it since. Something I realized as I grew older was how dark and sad the game is. Instead of having a bunch of dungeons and temples, the game focuses more on the overworld, characters, and the side quests. The speedrun community is still active, and new tricks are being discovered. Undertale, released in 2015 for the PC. Talk about a deceptively simple game that doesn't just go outside the box. It continues out the storage, the city, and leaves the fucking planet. I truly love the freedom of choice, and the soundtrack is possibly my all-time favorite. It can't be understated that almost everything was made by a single person. The simple graphics have their charm, and leaves a lot to your imagination, kind of like a book. The characters are written beautifully, and it really feels like you're new to this living, breathing world. It doesn't treat you like a hero, and that it all revolves around you, which makes your presence and choices feel all the more special. Another aspect I love is that it's not apparent who is the good or bad guy. Most people just assume that you are the good guy, especially when it comes to humans and monsters. Your choices will greatly affect this outcome. A work of art that will stand as a testament to how a low-budget game made by one person can turn out to be something truly special. Resident Evil for the GameCube, released in 2002. In my eyes, the king of survival horror. After all these years of remasters and remakes in the gaming world, This one still stands untouched as the best way to remake a classic game. Without breaking the charm of the original game, it adds so much more flavor, content and challenge so you never run out of ways to play it. Especially with the ongoing PC mods of randomizers. What makes this game stand out for me is how you have to respect every enemy. Instead of hordes of zombies that you dispatch off quickly for mindless fun, each zombie feels like a careful dance of room, space and resources. The claustrophobic nature of the mansion gives the enemies a huge advantage over you. Allowing the zombies to evolve into the faster and stronger Crimson Heads by leaving them on the ground for too long will force you to plan ahead and determine if it's worth the resources and time to dispose of them. This game will most likely stand as the Resident Evil game for me, since the series will probably never return to its classic tank-like gameplay. I believe that most people misunderstand that limiting the total control over your character makes the gameplay more strategic and easier for the developers to design perfect encounters in every room. The fixed camera angles makes every room special and adds to the tension of not being able to see in front of you all the time. Super Metroid, released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo. Considered by many to be the holy grail of video games, I definitely have to agree with that. When most people think about games, they think of the gameplay firsthand, and this is a prime example of where everything is built around the perfectly designed movement of the character. The soundtrack is also beautifully crafted for each area, and this game has one of my all-time favorite moments, and without spoiling, it takes place during the last boss fight. After beating the game countless times, I found even more replayability with various randomizers. The speedrun community is still active, world records are being taken, and new categories are appearing as well. Shadow of the Colossus, released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2. One of the few games I see as a work of art, more than just a video game. A beautifully mysterious experience that presents more questions than answers. It throws you into this huge, peaceful and open world for you to freely explore, but you quickly find out how empty it is. No one has lived here for a very long time. It has become a forbidden land. After playing a lot of games where you mindlessly defeat enemies wherever you go, it's a breath of fresh air to visit this world and lose yourself in it. Similar to Undertale, my favorite thing about the story and characters is that it's never clear who the good or bad guy is. The original PS2 release hasn't aged well for today's standards, so it's wonderful that Bluepoint gave this game the boost it deserves, which greatly enhanced the immersion. Here's hoping for an eventual PC release to further enhance the game for the future.
James, honey, did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway?
Silent Hill 2, released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2. It isn't just my favorite game of all time, it's also my favorite thing across all types of media, be it movies, series, music albums, or even art. Nothing has ever affected me on a deep level as much as this work of art. How can I explain what makes this game so special to me without spoiling it? The characters are geniusly written, so you know just enough what they want and are going through, but leaves a lot of room for interpretation. Some people say the acting is bad, because the actors don't do this for a living. I believe that's what makes the characters so special, because they aren't your typical Hollywood actors. They are human, they are not perfect. We all sometimes regret things we say and how we say them. Even the way the characters look have been designed to avoid artificial perfection. Everyone has their own flaws about them, but that's again what makes us human. Some say that the gameplay and combat is stiff and slow. I say that not every character is a highly trained killing machine. Some don't know how to fight properly or wants to fight at all. I think this adds to how believable the character is, and a way for the game to say that this character isn't you, it's James, and he has his own fair share of strengths and weaknesses. The game has multiple endings, but never makes it obvious how to obtain them. It doesn't just come down to a simple choice between A, B, and C. It silently gets decided during the entire course of the game, depending on how you play it. If you act recklessly and don't give a shit about James's health and put him through mental hardships, then you'll get a certain ending. On the other hand, if you take good care of James and want the best for him, you'll get an ending for that. I want the consumer to not look at Silent Hill 2 on the surface. Rather, I want them to look a little deeper. It's easy to say that this is a story with certain facts. I want the player to question, why did the creators do this or that? Or why did James or Maria react this way? This is a game where the questioning needs to be deeper to appreciate the real underlying story. So you can play this game like a typical horror game, where you search for your wife while killing monsters on the way. Or you can try to find the true meaning behind this twisted world. The sound design is truly remarkable, and the attention to detail can be seen everywhere.
To prevent repetition, he created hundreds of footstep sounds for the characters. This being said, however, Yamaoka is too good a musician not to know that silence is sometimes the best sound of all.
The music is amazing as well. The main theme was written in just 3 days and remains one of my favorite pieces of music. The background music has a haunting contrast between sadness and insanity. We designed the game in a way that the deeper you play, the more you can enjoy the atmosphere. Please look forward to exploring the game as much as possible. This is what the drama of Silent Hill 2 is about. It's not only grand, but also convincing in its depth. Most horror games rely on superficial ways to scare its audience, like jump scares or enemies running at you screaming. Psychological horror, like Silent Hill 2, uses the atmosphere, mood, and tension to deliver its horror. Unawareness of what's making you scared is far worse than understanding it. A lot of horror games and movies spend too much time and focus on what the danger is, to the point where you know everything about it. Then it's not scary anymore. The next time you play or see it, why would you be scared? You already know everything. For example, wouldn't vampires be much more frightening if you didn't know about its 10,000 weaknesses? I would like to comment on where I would like you to pay close attention to the game. The existence of fog and darkness, and the real and alternate world, is an important element in creating fear, just as in the previous title. However, for this title, I was conscious of a certain strangeness that was present in the game and in our daily lives. What I mean by strangeness is unexplained occurrences that can happen on and off with any real reason. Examples within the game would be the existence of Red Square, the circumstances in which you get the handgun, traffic lights which are turned on in a deserted town, wandering monsters in the real world, building of unrealistic structure, though they may seem realistic on surface, etc. Moreover, we incorporated these ideas of strangeness throughout the game. Please pay attention to the strangeness which we have tried to integrate into the game. It adds a different quality to the oppressive fear already prevalent. In closing, Silent Hill 2 is a masterpiece and doesn't even have or need a drop of nostalgia for it to be my favorite game of all time. Thank you for watching.
Never has horror been more poetic. Never has our emotional ambiguity been so skillfully exploited. The creators of Silent Hill are artists, and their game is a work of art. It's as real as this hand touching your face.
I'm real.
So why not take another look at Silent Hill 2?